Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Dialogue. I'm Taimur Shamil. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi is on his official visit to UAE, and this was a two-day official visit. UAE and Pakistan have cordial relations, historic relations. They're strategically aligned, very close to each other, and the relationship is very strong, I would say. Foreign Minister was there. He met his counterpart. He also met the Prime Minister of UAE and other officials. They talked about bilateral relations and strengthening the bilateral relations as well. They talked about trade, they talked about visas, and many other things that were related to the bilateral relationship of Pakistan and UAE. But today there was a significant development when Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi did a presser, and I would say a very important presser in which he mentioned that India is planning for surgical strike against Pakistan, and it has also been trying to get the approval of its supporters internationally, some big powers. This is a significant development, a big development when it comes to Pakistan-India relationship. And also another important point in this presser is the venue of the presser, the venue of this talk to the media. It is important because he was in UAE and talking about Pakistan-India relationship, talking about the situation, the political situation in the South Asia is very important, but mentioning that in UAE was also very significant. What was the background? What is going to be the future of Pakistan-India relationship? First of all, the way Foreign Minister has exposed India once again at a press conference, and this is not the first time, by the way. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi a few weeks back also did a presser with DG ISPR, in which both officials, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi and DG ISPR Major General Iftikhar Babar, they exposed India by naming the exact officials of the Indian Army and the Indian Diplomatic Corps who are involved in sabotaging the peace and stability in the region, who are based in Afghanistan and in India, supporting and financing the terrorist organizations like TTP, Jamaat-ul Ahrar and Hizbul Ahrar. So this is a big expose of the Indian designs. When Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said that they are aware, Pakistan is aware that India might carry out a surgical strike, he said that the intelligence reports are there, and credible intelligence reports have suggested that India is primarily maybe aiming something like surgical strikes against Pakistan. We'll be discussing about this with our special guest in the studio and on Skype and phone. We are joined by Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal, renowned senior academic and expert on Pakistan's national security and foreign policy. Welcome to the show, Dr. Jaspal. On Skype, we are joined by Hamid Al-Mashriqi, a renowned analyst from Lahore on political affairs, and we are joined by Brigadier Salim Butt, renowned senior analyst on Pakistan's national security and regional dynamics. I welcome you all. Welcome Brigadier Salim Butt. Right, we have Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi's soundbite, his clip where he mentioned about this whole episode that I just talked about the surgical strikes that we are expecting. We'll listen to that, and after that we'll continue our discussion.
India is planning a surgical strike against Pakistan. This is a serious development, and I also have knowledge that they have tried to seek tacit approval from important players who they consider to be their partners.
Right, you just saw Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi's presser. Dr. Jaspal, first of all, about this presser, the venue of the presser is very important, and this is a significant development, talking about India is planning for a surgical strike against Pakistan. How do you see this development?
I think that it's not new, and since a few months we have been hearing about this. The echo, or you can say the possibility of surgical strike, has not been ruled since 27th February 2019. Indian Armed Forces, Air Force, Navy, Indian army, they have been trying to find a gap, or what you call it, some kind of a loophole from where they try to bleed Pakistan and restore their supremacy, which they lost after the 27th February 2019. Now, the current situation in India is very important, and we have to not forget, since last, I think, starting from 1984 to date, Indian current ruling political party BJP gradually increases vote bank popularity by using very famous, which we call it in the international relation theories, trauma theory. They are presenting how India has been treated, or Hindus have been treated historically, and now how the India has been treated. They raise the anti-Pakistan slogan so much. Whenever their state elections comes, their general elections comes, they start raising these kind of things. And now they wanted to divert the internal situation towards the external crisis. And in this context, they tried it. On 15th June, they miserably failed. They were beaten. And now they have no other scapegoat, that is Pakistan. Now, your second part of your question is when you said timing and place.
Right, yeah.
I think that Foreign Minister, generally we have been reading, he visited the Dubai or UAE for ensuring the visa renewal of the workforce. 1.2 million workforce has been engaged in the UAE for economic development, X, Y, Z. But there are other indicators. Maybe they are correct or incorrect, but let me, as a researcher, what I can present in front of you. Indicator is that a few days before, Indian Army chief visited UAE. He met their forces and then he went to the Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Prior to that, Indian Army, or you can say India had a good relations with Iran, but now with Iran deteriorated and they started moving with these Gulf states. Now, following the Indian Army chief's visit, if our foreign minister is visiting there, definitely he is conveying his concern or our government's concern to the UAE leadership as well. And UAE leadership means when you use the word partners, you use the word partners. Today, India has declared by the America as a defense partner, as a most allied defense partner in the last 2-3 years. When we see the COMCASA, BICA, these kind of the agreements. Right. So today, India is virtually an ally of the United States. And within this alliances of the American, UAE is also an ally of the American.
So probably they were seeking some kind of green signal.
That was the green signals from the Americans. And of course, we do not expect that Americans will be going to encourage India to conduct these kind of the exercises. But there are certain indicators where they are not discouraging them as well.
Right.
Because the way after the 26th February, when the India did a surgical strike at Balakot, and immediately after the statement came by the Pompeo, at that time it was entirely seems that they have given something note. And now, but on 27th when Pakistan responded, then they have a different take. But similarly, this timing is very important for at least 1 month.
Right.
Because the Trump administration is there, the same allies are there, and maybe Biden will be not going to encourage.
So this is transition.
This is the timing when you said this 1 month is critical. Right. Why the place has been chosen? Because the partners and the Indian Army chief was there, and I think Foreign Minister made it very clear.
Very interesting. So, Brigadier, but talking about this development, significant development, I would say, Foreign Minister did a presser saying that India would carry out a surgical strike, and this is our intelligence reports. So there are 3 points primarily. One, the intelligence report on surgical strikes. Second thing is that India is seeking approval from its partners. And the third point is the venue. So how do you see these 3 categories, these 3 important points in this presser and in this development?
Thank you, Taimur. I agree with all the points given by Vardi Dr. Jaspal. All points are very valid. Indian report on Indian intent to do surgical strike, and very rightly pointed out by our foreign minister. The most important thing in this whole thing is, I think, the timing. When you come next, when you could be any, but speaking it from UAE, where Indian foreign minister and army chief recently made with it, and trying to seek perhaps consensus. It's a speculation, but looks very valid. As Dr. Jaspal said, India is the strategic ally of US. So, and when we say ally, the transition in the White House is about just 1 month left, and Trump has some special leverage with Modi, and Modi has leveraged with Trump, a lot of commonality. So Modi is under a lot of pressure on the domestic front, on the economic front. Farmers have taken siege of Delhi. There are millions of people who have laid siege to Delhi, and he's under tremendous pressure. On the regional front, China has given Modi a bloody nose in Ladakh and Doklam. On the western side, on Pakistan, Afghanistan side, when you see the peace process seems to be taking off to the dismay of India, despite all their spoiling efforts, and all these things. And then there have been reports of increasing distance between UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan, although they were exaggerated by the quarters who feel gleeful in doing that. But as we say, wherever there is a smoke, there is a fire. So there was some truth attached to that. So I think Foreign Minister made a good decision to go to UAE and try to dispel any misperception or misunderstanding. And only when the joint statement or the press statement comes out from UAE and Pakistan, only then one could say with affirmative notes what is the outcome of that. Because so far, as we heard this evening, the visa ban has not been lifted on new workers who want to go to UAE or who want renewal. So that still is a bitter point. So this is the kind of environment in which this intelligence report has come. So any surgical strike against Pakistan across a working boundary or the line of control looks on the card. Pakistan is well prepared. Armed forces are on high alert, and Pakistan is in a position to give yet another bloody nose after Feb 2019, when Abhinandan was down, 2 Indian aircraft were shot down. So Pakistan is ready to face this Indian onslaught, and I'm sure this note would not come from America when Joe Biden comes in. So this transition period, Modi wants to make use of, as I said, Afghanistan, the relations of Saudi Arabia, UAE, and their own turmoil internally and versus China. So all these factors combined together have given a ready-made environment to Modi to go for this space adventure. So it's quite a possible thing.
Right. Brigadier Bed, please stay with us on phone call. Mr. Hamid Al-Mashriqi, talking about this development, what are the motivations of BJP, let's say, and India? We know that today's India is ruled by a political party that is rather a political wing of the far-right extremist group like RSS and Shiv Sena. RSS primarily, they contest their elections on anti-Pakistan sentiment. They did the Balakot attack just to assuage that sentiment back in India. But motivation of this, let's say, attack that we are just talking about it, the surgical strike that India might attempt, what are the motivations? How do you see this?
Thank you very much, Taimur. As you see that I know what's happening in India right now in terms of continuous protest by the farmers and what's happening across India, and especially as Foreign Minister Qureshi has also pointed out that the Kashmir is again, it's like it's on its peak of resistance from the public for their freedom at this time. And according to so many reports, as you know as well, that the Indian occupied forces in Kashmir, they are doing suicide. They are afraid to even go on the streets, and they are having so many psychological things. So all these factors, and when especially India has been isolated itself by in the region due to his conflicts with all the neighbors, Taimur. And when we look into all these matters, Modi seems itself that he's been isolated, and he wants to divert the attention of his public, and he wants to divert the attention of the media and the opposition, which is criticizing him a lot, what he is doing with his neighbors and what he is doing to the farmers and minorities in India. Now, I would say, to be honest, if you look into past few months, it is already a kind of war is already started by India by doing, unprovoked ceasefire violations over line of control. And then today, what incident happened that they did the firing on the UN peace, mission forces in Chakoti sector. So this is all saying that at this time, the Modi is desperate of humiliation, which he is facing due to his acts, what he is doing in India, especially with the minorities. Taimur, this is the time when, I would say that I agree with both of our participants, Brigadier Saab and Dr. Saab, that Foreign Minister Qureshi has used this UAE trip very rightly by pointing out all the factors and all the probabilities in front of the world on an international place. This is the place where the world should listen to us, and we are trying to give a wake-up call to the world again and again that, as we all know, that Pakistan and India, this is a flashpoint region of two nuclear countries, and it is easy to start a war. It is never easy to end a war, as it is very clearly understood. And what they are thinking that if they will do a surgical strike, would we not retaliate? Yes, we would retaliate. We have told to the world many times that we are ready to fight with India till the last bullet and last soldier. And this is our nation stand.
Right, Mr. Mashriqi, we'll continue our discussion on this. Dr. Jaspal, talking about India's motivations. What did they gain after Balakot, let's say? It was sheer embarrassment for India. Abhinandan was here, we returned him back. After that, India also faced another embarrassment at Ladakh, for that matter. So Modi's policies have been bringing India much more embarrassment, I would say. If they would want to go for another surgical strike kind of thing that they're talking about, what would be the, let's say, repercussions and scenario in South Asia?
Look, if you try to see what they gain, we have to divide at two levels. First is India as a state or Indians as a nation, what they gain. And second is what Modi as a politician, what he
Will gain. Right.
In the Balakot and in the aftermath of Balakot, India as a state or Indians as a nation, they lost their supremacy in the region. Since 1971 till 27th April, Indians have been living with this superiority complex that conventionally they are stronger, and whenever they desire, they can bleed Pakistan. And they tried it many times. They changed the LOC, but Pakistan started responding India effectively after we did a cold test in March 1983. After that is the first time we responded them of 1971, but very calculatedly in the Siachen crash. Right. But after that, if you see continuously, Pakistan has been alarming the international community, but we were more alive. And no one was expecting, if you review the literature, till the 27th February 2019, and when I was doing my research on the book, at that time also I came to this conclusion that the international community was only buying and looking Pakistan as an irresponsible nuclear weapon state. But after 27th, India lost this the stigma of responsibility. Now my second point is that what you said, what gain? Yes, Modi gained. Prime Minister Modi in 2014 won election because of his economic agenda. And this, you can say, a stigma attached that what he did in the, what you call it in Gujarat, economic uplifting, and then he used this stigma was where you can say butcher of Muslims of the Gujarat. The same kind of the thing he played in the 2014, but when he reached to the 2019, economy was going down. And he needs an other slogan, and he pushed everything on it. And his colleagues started working on this agenda since 2016 September. And if you see from 2016 September, when Pakistan said there was no strike, but they were saying there was strike, and the Indian media, and now Indian fake media, you have just pointed out, it has been unearthed that kind of the reporting, they change the Indian public mind in a way that Modi is able to deliver. And in 2019, he won the election by using the word Chaukidar. Even recently, it's very important, which we are missing in the Bihar election and the recent 2-3 states where they were not touching the local issues. In the entire election, they were touching the national issues. And in the last one and almost now to August 5, or if you can say February 2, the Indian leadership, I mean Prime Minister Modi, his courts like Amit Shah, they are too much relying on this for the sake of their popularity, and they are maintaining this popularity, anti-Pakistan, anti-Muslim, and these kind of things. It has result. They have gained in a way as a
political party,
but as a nation, as a India, they have lost.
Right.
That is my understanding. And now in this context, when we are looking where they are heading, this is very dangerous. Look, Pakistan has not made anything hidden. If you see, Pakistan announced earlier that we have a full spectrum deterrence strategy, but at the same time, we made it clear to the Indians. Quid pro quo plus. And we are very making clear that we are not initiating, but if you initiate, we will be going to second ladder of the escalation. If India go for third, we are going to fourth. And in this interesting case, when the Indians started last time, we went on the second ladder of the escalation, India didn't. In the Indian media, Indian analysts said, though the Indian media is big and they started shifting this, the sensible Indian analysts, they said, Modi said 27th is an act of war. Why he did not respond? No, this is the position which we have to take. Now again, if our foreign minister sitting in the UAE, informing entire world without, this time is very clear when he said, India is planning, India is getting approval from its partners.
You're seeking approval.
So this is a very important. If India go for this strike, but my worry is Pakistan is going to retaliate. Escalation cannot be, you can say, ignored. The reason is that this time this escalation will be going to further third, fourth rung of the escalatory ladder, and which will be very disastrous. And why I'm saying this, if you recall, after February, Indian Prime Minister continuously used nuclear weapons threat. So India has been using nuclear compelled strategy, what we use it in the strategic discourse, against Pakistan, and Pakistan is not going to accept it. And theoretically and practically speaking, nuclear compelled strategy is not workable against nuclear weapon state. And this is a misleading element to the Indian leadership.
Very interesting. And Brigadier, but Prime Minister Imran Khan has been drawing this parallel of the Nazi Germany under Hitler and with the BJP under Modi, India under Modi. And we see the similar kind of situation now. I mean, here is an aggressor, and we see that this aggressor can push the whole region to the brink of war. This can undermine the regional security. And one very important thing, he also mentioned that if this thing happens, this can have a very, I would say, adverse effect on the peace talks in Afghanistan. So everything is linked. If this goes on from the Indian side, this can also disturb the peace process that is going on in Afghanistan. So there is some sort of domino effect. How do you see this?
Thank you, Taimur. I already said that the biggest victim of such an misadventure from India across the working boundary or line of control would badly impact the progress so far gained on Afghanistan peace process. As you know, Taliban delegation are here today. They met Prime Minister Imran Khan, Abdullah visited Pakistan, Gulbuddin Hekmatyar came here. So India is, really upset all about it, because everything that is happening on the Afghanistan front, it is making everybody happy and comfortable, less India. So India is the biggest spoiler, and they are very upset about it. So any misadventure would have direct adverse impact on the outcome of the peace process. So, and very rightly pointed out by Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi, who hinted at that if India did that, it would be badly impacting the outcome of the peace process. Now, having said that, I come to the other point that you said, Hindutva. I think any far-right nationalist politics that Modi has been following, like Trump, we have seen the poor impact of that, outcome of that, because what was common between Mr. Trump and Mr. Modi was the far-right nationalism. Trump has tested the outcome of that. He has lost the election. And Modi is seeing that as maybe as an indicator and writing on the wall that in forthcoming election, he could not spin around the Indian economy. He could not satisfy the disturbed masses in India as the former agitation, which has been joined by the civil society, by the lawyers and other section of the society. So things are getting out of his hand, and that is appointed to the BJP and RSS that in the forthcoming election, even in the state elections, they are going to be losers. So therefore, they have to do some magic, and that magic is only in their hand, that they have to uptick the offensive against Pakistan, whether it comes as a black swan operation, stage managed operation within India, or they do misadventure across the line of control or across the working body, that remains to be seen. But I think talking about the all-out war in nuclear environment, any sane mind would not agree in India or Pakistan would to talk about the international community. I think nuclear deterrence has been well established among all the nuclear states. So therefore, Modi or Mr. Modi, the deep state or the military commanders would never jump to that escalation ladder when the things get out of hand. So it is unthinkable to talk in terms of nuclear weapons. I think any sane mind would be very reluctant and hesitant to talk about it. So we should talk in the conventional terms. I think we have certain limits. India has even greater limits. And mind you, today, Chief of Army Staff, along with the Air Chief, they visited an operational base where they witnessed the 9th Pak-China Air Force exercises, and see the statement that came on. Any misadventure against Pakistan or China would be a mutual thing. So India has never factored in earlier China in Indo-Pakistan context. But today, if they do any misadventure against Pakistan, China would be standing shoulder to shoulder with Pakistan, and international community or Indian partners would never be able to relegate that point anymore.
This is a very important point, and we are going to continue our discussion on this point after the break. The China factor when it comes to the regional security and regional politics, and also what is the country that India is seeking its approval from, as Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi just mentioned. And we are also going to discuss about the China factor, because recently, a few months back, we saw the embarrassment that India had to face at Ladakh, then with Afghanistan for that matter. I mean, talking about the regional politics, India has rather no role to play. Looking at this relationship with China, with Nepal, with Sri Lanka, with Bangladesh for that matter, and no role in Afghanistan, rather the role of a spoiler in Afghanistan. We're going to talk about this China factor after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are discussing Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi's visit to UAE and his important presser in UAE, in which he mentioned that India is planning for a surgical strike, and this is the intelligence information that we have, Pakistan has. And if India goes for any such sort of misadventure, Pakistan would give a befitting response to India. Dr. Jaspal, talking about this situation, the China factor, as we were discussing earlier, how do you see that? India faced embarrassment at Ladakh. We also know that the partners who want India to take a larger role in the region would also want India to undermine the security, Chinese security perhaps. So how do you see the equation? India undermining China, India also undermining Pakistan and several other countries, becoming more sort of a bully in that region. How do you tackle and handle such sort of a bully or wannabe aggressor, I would say?
I think that India has been playing a game. Generally, India lacks the capacity to strike on China. That is very clear. Indians themselves are aware, but they have an indirect encouragement. In fact, the Indians are also interested to prove that they have a China's military posture. And now it has been proven, and that's why Bika happened. Before that, Americans were looking and they were pressurizing them that they must come out, and Indians were talking about billions dollars trade with China, and the Chinese were also, you can say, acting very uh, patiently on the Ladakh issue or these kind of the issues. But when these things matured, as a result, there was a conflict. Now, when India is seeking, you can say, permission from the partner, as an outsider, I'm not an insider of the government, but what my understanding is, the reference is, if you recall, on 27th October, when there was a 2+2 ministerial meeting, third round in Delhi, at that time when there was a joint meeting between the Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and the Pompeo, the State Secretary of the United States, when they came out and in front of the media, Pompeo made a very clear statement that the America will be going to defend India's sovereignty and they are with them. These kind of the statements were made. And after that, naturally, it was, of course, Americans are not asking India to strike on Pakistan, but they are asking India to engage China. And when they engage China, naturally, India is more interested to punish us and to deter China. That is the India strategy. But in this entire context, when you see current situation, that's why we are alarmed that they cannot do anything towards that, and they try to create a problem with us. Indirectly, they wanted to create a trouble for the China, because if Pakistan and India war started, definitely CPEC or this new route which is going from this side, Chinese will be getting rid of Malacca, Dalima, and these kind of things. I think it's a bigger game. And in that, of course, Pakistan's geostrategic location, Pakistan's pivotal position, that is making it a very significant. Keeping in mind all these things, whereas now there are interesting points. Number one is, in the case of India, farmers' rights. They are blocking everything.
Right.
Number two, minorities' trouble. Number three, since August 5, 1999, Kashmir is not in their control. And now what the Kashmiri leadership is saying, I mean the pro-Indian leadership, they are saying, we prefer to be governed by China, not by New Delhi. Now the third is their problem with the Bangladesh have started because of Assam or these kind of the things. Economy is declining, and above all, COVID is there. All these things collectively compel the Indian leadership that they can identify some kind of a new slogan. And apart from that, what is the happening? Indian rational mind within India, they have been writing that after 5th August, despite this lockdown in the Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir, they failed to control it. They failed to change it. They went for all kind of the state terrorism, but they are unable to control it. It's a big stigma for the current government. What the Indian government is saying, they are saying because they are unable to control the Indian occupied Kashmir because of the Pakistan's activities, Pakistan's, you can say, infiltration, something like blah, blah. Then raise the second question, why then you are not acting against Pakistan when you are a chowkidar? So that's the reason that when we expect, these are the developments which are going to compel the Prime Minister Modi to do some kind of a military adventurism against Pakistan. And now the problem is that when you are dealing with not a statesman, with a politician, for politician, the problem is, it's an inbuilt problem of the politician that he is looking for his today's voter.
Right.
And in order to satisfy that, he can take any kind of risk.
And
that is the problem.
Interestingly, he is not just a politician, Mr. Hamid al-Mashriqi. He is a member of a group.
RSS. He's
RSS.
an abnormal personality.
Not-
He has no family. He's a park charak, and he's a grown up without family, without property. But these kind of abnormal people.
That's right, and I mean not just a normal politician. He is member of RSS, grew up with RSS, Pracharak, as Dr. Jaspal just mentioned, and he has been coming up with a background. I mean, what happened in Gujarat? He is known as Butcher of Gujarat. Killed so many innocent people in Gujarat, innocent Muslims for that matter. He has become the Prime Minister, so he comes up with an agenda, and we can see the agenda. If this continues, how do you see the strategic balance in South Asia and what can come up in the future?
Taimur, if we talk about what Fascist Modi is, if you look into his team, what he has got, Amit Shah, Ajit Doval, and then it is a complete gang of people who just followed the RSS Hindutva ideology. which means they just want to, demolish all the minorities there. And this is what pure fascist government is there. I don't think it's a political government now there. I consider it's an extremely fascist government who has only one agenda, to try to prove their supremacy in the region. They will continue. But the problem is that there will be a big damage because of their ambitions, because of their aims, what they are trying to do, or what they try to achieve. And when we talk about it, interestingly, I always think that the butcher of Gujarat, the person who was not even allowed to enter in United States, has got a reception from the President Trump in Howdy Moody and other, receptions. So this is the, I would say, hypocrisy of America and modern world, that the person who has been accused, who's been proven guilty, and who's been banned to enter in those countries, he's been received with such high grades. That was the hypocrisy of America and other countries. This is the reason that they are always, try to hide their crimes. What Modi is doing is war crimes in Kashmir. What Modi is doing, with the minorities, they are like a kind of a genocide they are trying to do, trying to change the demographics. So this will affect badly the whole region. If we talk about, there is no doubt that China will come shoulder to shoulder with Pakistan in case of any misadventure from India. So if you was talking in the program that who's going to give, what is the seeking of which country? Obviously, he's trying to get permission from America, and at the moment, because the Trump has only few weeks left, he's trying to do anything to be still remain as some kind of known American president, because he is not a sane person.
Right.
When it comes to statements like that. So situation, I would say one last thing, that Pakistan needs to be very vigilant. Pakistan needs to tell the whole world that this is world's responsibility to stop any kind of mad action and misadventure from India, because Pakistan and Pakistan forces are ready to retaliate and ready to give them a befitting reply, like we did in the February when we brought down their 2 jets. So we have proven our supremacy and our strength in retaliation when it comes to even conventional war. It is not about that.
Right.
We will always retaliate.
Here is another question, Brigadier. But when we look at the Gulf states in the perspective of the developments that have been taking place in the Gulf recently, UAE formalized its relationship, diplomatic relationship with Israel, as Dr. Jaspal just mentioned, and that is also in the reports. Indian Army Chief also visited UAE. How do you see the role of the Gulf states in what is happening between Pakistan and India and in the region? We see that the regional shifts are taking place. The political landscape is changing rapidly. How do you see these developments, and specifically the Gulf states and their role in the changing regional dynamics?
Thank you, Timur. Very good question. I wanted you to ask this question, and thanks for asking. I think what is the development in the Gulf with Israel, it is more to do with the White House, Trump's White House, whose son-in-law, Nazir Jew, sitting in the White House, and they went in a lot of haste to give realization, at least give some traction to the dream of greater Israel coming true. And Israel developing relations with Bahrain, with UAE, with Saudi Arabia, and some other Arab countries. That is indicative of not only one thing, but many more things. Republican Party, the Trump focus was on Israel, shifting U.S. embassy to Jerusalem was one big decision, discarding two-state concept altogether, at least is gone invisible now. But with the change in the White House, the U.S. may not be as focused on Israel as has been the case with Trump. But I think Trump has been able to give good traction, good toehold to Israel in the Middle East. And it has something to do against Iran. I think Trump has very successfully divided the Arab countries, especially in the Middle East, into two blocks. We have been talking about it. One coalition is led by KSA, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, they are together in that. And the other is Iran, along with Qatar. Turkey stands somewhere in yet another corner. Pakistan stands bewildered, looking here and there what to do all about it with the developments. We have seen complete devastation of Middle East, which started somewhere in December 2010, what we call Arab Spring. That was Obama in power, Democratic Party was in power, and they did experiment bringing around a Western-style democracy in Arab countries, in Levant, in North Africa, and you know the result, what has happened in Sudan, what has happened in Tunisia, what has happened in Egypt, what has happened in Libya, Syria, Iraq. Not only the rulers have been changed, but the countries went for the civil war. And Trump, when he came, the Republican president, he started, extricating and got disenchanted because of the domestic pressure. They needed to save money. They needed to take off the pressure from the dead bodies coming from all over the world. And Middle East was effectively divided into two. Let Muslims be divided on the ethnic lines, Iran versus Saudi Arabia, and Israel now stands with Saudi Arabia. But Pakistan's distancing with UAE and Saudi Arabia has something to do with this. Saudis and Emirates, they expected that Pakistan would stand very clean along with them in some kind of coalition, because there is some invisible coalition for somewhere in Saudi Arabia who are yet to acquire any military capability, but one is that Pakistani general is there. So they thought Pakistan would stand very clearly with the Saudi-led coalition, being a Sunni country. But Pakistan did a very logical thing, not siding with neither with the Irani bloc or nor with them, but they tried to be a bridge between the two blocs. So that is not to the liking of India or to the liking of the Israel, even to the liking of the American. But coming to the question that India is perhaps seeking some approval from USA or the regional countries who appear to be the American partners, let me say that Saudi Arabia and UAE are not really partners of USA, rather they are afraid of USA abandoning them, because as soon as Trump goes out and Biden comes in, the Democrat Party, as they abandoned the Arabs from 2010 to 2018, they could very well abandon them again. And Biden is on record. He said that he's going to stop the supply of the arms and ammunition to Saudi Arabia because they killed Khashoggi and there are human rights violations. And all the Democrats, they voted against Saudi Arabia. And now, when you say that what is the situation in Middle East, I think Pakistan has to play a very positive and very constructive role because of the changes that are taking place on the global scene as well as on the regional scene. And Modi and his followers, I think they are reading the writing on the wall, as I said earlier. With Trump going out, America may not be supporting India as they were expecting by those bear hugs that Modi had been doing with Trump. So Pakistan is, I think, doing very well, and Saudis and Emirates, they have been our time-tested friends. I think they will soon come to senses that they must not lose Pakistan, because Pakistan has been their strongest ally. We have been supporting them on the security front in and out, and they have to be thankful to us. If they had been, granting on some money concession, the Saudi loans have been returned thanks to the timely reprieve that came from China. So Pakistan, I think, needs to be respecting, showing more self-respect, and even our diaspora that is working in Saudi or UAE, we should not seem to be begging for continuation of that. We should have government-to-government agreements where the self-respect of the Pakistan, their security, their healthcare, everything must be catered for. So this is a brief take. We should not be unnerved that Saudis or Emirates, they are going into the Indian basket. That is not the case at all, in my view.
Right. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Dr. Jaspal, pleasure having on the show. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. Brigadier Butt, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. Mr. Hamid Al-Mashriqi, pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for joining us. That is all from today's dialogue. See you next time. Khuda Hafiz.